This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's actually kind of nice out, I suppose. Although it's a bit cold in them thar hills this morning. But hopefully it is warm where you are. But yes, welcome to Sunday. We're here once again to go over some interesting stories from the week, and boy howdy, has it been a busy week. I could cover the drones. I guess I could cover the Trump defamation settlement, but these things have been handled much better by others. How about some stories that are a little bit off to the side, but interesting nonetheless? How about those? Maybe I'll cover those anyway. Who knows? But yeah, it's been a crazy week, and it's only going to get crazier as the weeks go on, I can only assume. Especially if we're being invaded by aliens, because why not? And I mean like the extraterrestrial kind. The other kind has been true for several years now. But anyway, I could get into all that. But who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? The Alexander. Good morning. Max Mutze. I know I'm mispronouncing that, Max. You need to tell me how to appropriately pronounce that, correctly pronounce that. Mutze? I want to say Mutze. Probably wrong. Dom O'Leary. Good morning. Old Guy Gamer. Good morning. Greetings and salutations, Mr. Scribe. Scribelight up at 2:46 a.m. this morning for, I've got no idea. Was I awake at 2:46 a.m. or you awake at 2:46 a.m.? Assuming the latter. Keeverdam, good morning to you, and thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the links to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society at the top of the chat box, guys. If you take a look at that, if you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you ahead of time for that. And thank you, Keeverdam, for posting that. And good morning, Keeverdam. K. Scholl, good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg. Mr. X51, good morning. And Derek LaRue, holy cats, thank you, Derek. As always, for your continued support and generosity. That's ridiculously generous. Hope you're having a good morning and hope you enjoy the show. TFE Works, good morning. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning to you. Jill Powers, the River Daughter, good morning to you. Good morning, Scribelight, and all you brilliant scribblers. Scribblers or scribers or, you know, how's it going, Scribelight Nation? No, I'm not going to do that. Mike R., good morning. Tier Alexander, the Scourge, good morning. Who else is here? Anybody else? Robert Pincus, good morning to you. John Trioxin, good morning. Ryan R., good morning. Price of Reason. Oh my gosh, it's a Price of Reason. Everybody, do you know about Price of Reason? Well, let me tell you about Price of Reason. Price of Reason is a constant panel, co-panelist with me on Midnight's Edge After Dark. I've been on his show, The Night Owl, a couple of times. I need to have him on my channel at some point. He's been nice enough to have me on his channel. I need to have him on for like a TEDx or something. But yeah, go check out Price of Reason on YouTube. Also Price of Reason Live. Amongst other things, Price also covers an ongoing series analyzing episodes of Quantum Leap, one of the best TV shows ever made. Yeah, go check out Price of Reason. Nice to see you, Price. Good morning to you. And I hope you're having a good day. Hope you enjoy the show. Shadowclaw, good morning. Who else is here? Brian Morissette, good morning. Jeremiah Hembry, good morning to you. Who else is Secret Vampire Heiress? And the secret is out. Adam Nixon, good morning to you. Anybody else? Faithless, good morning. Full Metal Joker, good morning. Leanna Johnston, good morning to you. And scrolling, make sure I don't miss anybody here. Sabian187, good morning. And I think that's everybody. You have to be a guest on Quantum Leap Revisited. As long as it's an episode I remember, because I watched it religiously as a kid, but it's been a long time. Like, gosh, what was the one where he has to jump back in time into Al's body and like fix something for Al, while Al is also at the same time like being a witness at a congressional hearing or something. For some reason, that one sticks in my mind. But there's a whole bunch of good. I think probably one of my favorite ones is where he's playing the mobster, and he has to send his guys out to plug in a hair dryer at a specific plug at a specific time in order to black out the East Coast to make everything. There is some crazy stuff going on in that series. I loved it. Lewis, good morning to you. And Somnamnule Nation, good morning. And Adam Myers, good morning to you. So anyway, guys, good morning. And holy cats, thank you guys for joining me. We got a lot of stories to cover this morning, so let me get right into those. Also, at the end of the show, I'll be putting up a link to the Discord server where you can join the Discord, if you know the secret word. So let's start off with, what shall we start off with? Let's talk about Antony. Have we talked about Antony before? I don't know that I've ever really talked about Antony on this, on here. I do have a tenuous connection, and it is very tenuous connection to the Anthony Weiner saga. I'll describe that in a little bit. But Anthony Weiner, ex-Representative Anthony Weiner, jailed for sexting a child, eyes a political comeback in New York City Council. This guy simply does not know when to quit. Former U.S. Representative Anthony Weiner has filed to run for a seat on the New York City Council, launching a potential political comeback after his once promising career was destroyed by sexting scandals and later a criminal conviction for having illicit online contact with a child. Campaign finance records list a campaign committee that was set up on Friday for Weiner called Weiner 25, in addition to listing him as a candidate for a council seat in Lower Manhattan. In a phone conversation Tuesday with the Associated Press, Weiner, a Democrat, said he is, quote, still exploring whether to actually campaign for the office. He said he opened the committee late last week so he could participate in a forum held by the Downtown Independent Democrats later this week. He referred additional questions to the recent statements he made on his weekly radio show, The Middle with Anthony Weiner. I only recently discovered that Anthony Weiner had a radio show. That was a couple of months ago. And I was just curious, like, what's up with Anthony Weiner? And he has a radio show that I'd never heard of. I don't think most people have either. But anyway, he has his own radio show, The Middle, because Anthony Weiner is really in the middle of things, where he said, quote, I haven't decided if I want to do this yet, unquote. While considering the personal dynamics of a return to politics, he wants to do it. Oh, he wants to do it. Anthony knows nothing else but seeking attention and affirmation. Nothing else. That's what led him to his downfall in the first place. He's addicted to it. And the spotlight of public service and elsewise really feeds that. Weiner represented a congressional district in New York City for about 12 years before he resigned in 2011 after sending lewd photos to several women. He tried to make a comeback in 2013 to run for mayor, but was damaged by new revelations of explicit photos Weiner had sent under the online alias Carlos Danger. Weiner pleaded guilty in 2017 to having illicit online contact with a 15-year-old girl and was sentenced to 21 months in federal prison. He was released in 2019 and was ordered to register as a sex offender. Oh, Antony. And there's a great documentary about his mayoral run just called Weiner that came out, I think it was either HBO or Showtime many years ago. That's really interesting. But if you want a very relatively recent breakdown of the Anthony Weiner breakdown, check out Matt Orchard's channel on YouTube, Matt Orchard Crime and Society. He did a Anthony Weiner rundown, and I may have been recruited to provide some voiceover work for that little documentary that Matt Orchard did. You might have to listen to see where you can find me in that documentary. But yeah, Anthony Weiner is just an amazing character, absolute degenerate failure that just cannot stop. But I guess he waited 10 years. The last big story I remember about Anthony Weiner before this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago when he was considering, and I don't know if he did this or not, he was considering taking the tweet that outed him as a sexting freak and turning it into an NFT to sell because he was so strapped for cash that he'd start turning elements of his scandal into NFTs to sell on the market. I don't know if he ended up doing that, but man, what a prize. What a prize Anthony Weiner is. Oh, Miranda Stone is here, everybody. You guys know about Miranda Stone, don't you? Well, if you don't... Yes, Miranda Stone, queen of the Discords. And thank you, Miranda, for posting the link to Matt Orchard's video on the subject. It is really worth a watch. Yeah, somewhere in there you may spot my voice, as well as the voice of Formy in human form. Just as a plug there. But yeah, so Anthony Weiner, back up again. Adam Myers. I can't wait for the false equivalence arguments of this guy and Trump for his supporters. Yeah, a convicted felon running for office of some kind or another. Oh my gosh. It's amazing. But yeah, I just, anything dealing with Anthony Weiner, it's just, it's been such an amazing story to watch him flail about and destroy himself over and over and over again. I guess he's going for the hat trick, because there's going to be some scrutiny like, hey, Anthony, what have you been up to since your release in 2019? What has the last 4 years done for you? Or you done for yourself? Guess we'll find out. Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm also simulcasting on X. So on the off chance anybody sees this going on X at the same time that I'm doing this, if you could share that out or retweet it or whatever. We had our first X comment come through last stream from Meggles. So my X cherry was broken. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean. Because of Meggles. It's a rare honor. Speaking of, it's not the best segue in the world, and this is a family show, but, you know, all the same. Speaking of broken cherries, can we not avoid the story of Lily Phillips? Now, when this came out a while back, because I remember this being promoted as a meme for a time, where this woman, OnlyFans model Lily Phillips, and I have to be careful as to how much I can show on here. I don't know if it's going to end up getting me in trouble on YouTube or something. Anyway, she was going to do an OnlyFans stunt where she slept with 100 men in a day. And I remember, because I'm an old man at this point, I thought, boy, that's some low target right there. Because I recall an event from either the late 90s or early 2000s called the Houston 500, which I think turned into like the Houston 620 or something, where this porn star, Houston, took on 500 guys in, I think, 24 hours or something, except it turned into 620. It's gross, but I thought 100 is small potatoes. But maybe that's a big deal for OnlyFans. I don't know. But either way, so this model, Lily Phillips, she took on 100 guys in a day. Ugh. And apparently, somewhere in here, she had no idea how HIV was transmitted, person to person. Which makes everything even more gross than before. Model Lily Phillips. What kind of model? Not much of a role model. But either way, Lily Phillips, who slept with 100 men in a day, leaves people sick, as she didn't know HIV was sexually transmitted. Okay, now you know what? I gotta be really careful about this. I don't know what I can show on here. Oh my gosh. Okay. You know what? I take it back. I don't know what YouTube's going to do to me. That's all I really need to say at that point. That's all I really need to say. You have somebody, I think she's 23 years old, 24 years old now, something like that. How can you live in this world and not understand, first and foremost, if you're in a adult-oriented industry, how can you not know the health risks in what you're doing? How can you know if you have guys come in with it? I'm assuming she had them come in with their test results first and foremost before anything else happened. I'm assuming. I don't know. But why would they have tests in the first place if you didn't? This entire thing makes me, and again, I'm not a prude here, but there's a level, there's a line of stupidity and just self-debasement. I just can't, I can't comprehend to a certain extent, and just is very difficult to articulate. especially on a family channel. But anyway, this actress, model, whatever, she goes into the situation being completely ignorant of the health risks to herself, let alone to the people that she's engaging with, let's say, and, you know, by extension, all the people they may engage. The whole thing is just gross. The whole thing is just gross. And I'm not talking about on a moral level necessarily, although that's really there too, but just on a health level, on a self-respect level. The big deal that came out this week that really started the story going in the first place was a video of her being interviewed, sort of an after-action video, where she's being interviewed about the long-term effects on her psychology, on her mental state after having gone through this thing, except she played as though, I can't play the video, I'm not going to even try, but she played as though this was something that happened to her. Like she was walking down the street and against her will this occurred, except that's not the case. The most that I saw of this event was the video of her promoting it, and then some kind of like after video where she's being interviewed after it was all over with. And this is something she initiated. She brought this on of her own volition. She brought this on for attention and clout and clicks and money and all that stuff. And then she's sitting there being interviewed and she's crying her eyes out as though she were a victim. And on a certain level, I could understand someone having put themselves through this, having buyer's remorse, right? And even being psychologically scarred from the event simply on the basis of this sort of mechanical action you're taking with a bunch of strangers of something that is probably one of the most intimate acts you can undertake as a human being, and turning it into this assembly line, thoughtless, emotionless, yeah. So I could see someone not understanding what the ramifications possibly were about this before they did it. And then afterwards going like, yeah, that was a bad idea. I made a big mistake. I could see that. I could, you know, in my human of compassion of human, I could understand that. But she played it off as though she were the victim. And that's the part that I just can't, no, this was a decision you made. Your eyes were wide open. Your brain might have been wide empty, but that's on you. That's not on anybody else. But now, even after this, even after going through this 100 or 101 guys in a day or whatever it was, she's planning on upping the ante to 1,000. I hope she doesn't do it. For her own sake, I hope she doesn't do it. Unless it's already happened and they just haven't posted it yet or something. It's just, why? Why would you do that to yourself? Some things just go beyond my personal comprehension. I can't do it. Just can't. But anyway, so sorry for that. I didn't know what images they were going to post in there, and I don't want to risk something goofy going on with my YouTube channel if I show off the wrong image or the algorithm decides I've done something wrong. So apologies for that, but there you go. So let's move on. That was a story, an ongoing story, I suppose. Let's move on to something else that's sort of not quite. It's about models after a fashion. And I had a little joke there, after a fashion. But I saw this yesterday, and just another example of poor Netherlands. I tell you what, Scandinavia and Netherlands and so on, they're going through some major shifts lately, but poor Netherlands. Miss Netherlands pageant scrapped as the world is changing, organizers say. They steal a line from nearly every action or intrigue movie trailer from the last 20 years. The world is changing. And why has it been scrapped? Well, the Miss Netherlands beauty pageant has been scrapped after the competition's organizers said it was time for a change. The contest will no longer run. And in its place, those behind it have introduced a new initiative aimed at, quote-unquote, inspiring young people in many different ways. The move comes just over a year after the contest's judges crowned its first ever trans woman winner, Ricky Coley. Or Rekai Coley, I don't know how to say that. Gosh, so after you completely destroyed the entire idea of a female beauty pageant by having a man win, Now suddenly you're like, oh, we're not going to do it anymore. We're going to leave it off there? Okay. A statement on the competition's website announced its closure and the establishment of a new platform called, oh boy, Niet meer van deze tijd, no longer of this time. It states, quote, after years of history full of glamour, talent, and inspiration, Miss Netherlands is saying goodbye to the name that found itself in many people's hearts. But this is not the end. It is a new beginning. The world is changing, and we are changing with it. Miss Netherlands is transforming into no longer of this time, or Time's Up, a platform that revolves around mental health, social media, diversity, self-expression, and much more. No more crowns, but stories that connect. No dresses, but dreams that come to life. Here we inspire young people to be themselves in a world that is constantly changing. Unquote. In a statement sent to CNN, Monica Van E., director of Miss Netherlands and founder of the new platform, said, quote, women are insecure due to, among other things, the rise of social media and its unreal images of beauty, unquote. Right, the unreal images of beauty, which is represented by beauty pageants of real women. But anyway, defending the contest's record to date, she said her team had, quote, worked intensively with participants, unquote, over the years, and that the empowerment of women was not just empty words, but a movement. Pardon me. The empowerment of women. When you just told us that women are inherently insecure because the world. Okay. The viewer feedback has become increasingly difficult to manage, however. You mean after you made a man the winner of a female beauty pageant? Yeah, I can imagine. Van E. said the reason for dropping the castings and finals initially arose from the, quote, obstinacy of the spectator, quote, and criticisms like she is too white or she is too black. I got a feeling those were not the criticisms of the past pageant. I got a feeling. Quote, this leads to negative energy every year, she said. Well, here's the thing. Even if that's true, here's a thought. I know. It's a difficult thing to understand in this day and age. Sticks and stones. Also, comments online are just texts on a screen. You can ignore them. They only have the power you invest into them. So even if those were really the biggest criticisms of your pageant, why don't you put the lie to the hater and continue onward? Because you know that your purpose is, pure and well-meaning. Instead, you're going to give in to the critics, to the trolls. Yeah, that's a good message. Quote, secondly, we would like to use our positive energy instead of always having to get defensive. Then stop defending yourself. Now we can reach everyone and provide the right solidarity. We believe in our platform, and perhaps a sash and a crown are outdated. But women who support each other and help each other, that has always been important to us, except when we're putting up a man as a winner above women. But never mind that. Cole, this is the winner from last year, who is one of 2 trans women who went on to compete in Miss Universe 2023, used her influence to promote a more inclusive vision of the pageant world. In a video posted to Instagram last year, she said, quote, Miss Universe asked us to describe ourselves in one word. The word I'm choosing is victory. Because as a little boy, I conquered all the things that came through my path. And look at me now, standing here as a strong, empowering, and confident trans woman, unquote. The beauty pageant world has been forced to modernize in recent years as the values the shows traditionally embrace do not chime with younger generations. I think that chime is quickly rolling back. The pendulum is swinging. This year's Miss Universe, held in Mexico City last month, admitted women aged over 28 for the first time ever. It followed moves last year to lift the ban on including pregnant women or mothers and women who are or have ever been married. Okay. That rule still stands in some pageants, however. Back in September, a New York woman submitted a complaint to the city's Commission on Human Rights seeking to end an exclusion of mothers. The Miss Universe organization came under scrutiny earlier this year as the parent company of Miss USA. In May, Miss USA and Miss Teen USA resigned within days of one another amid allegations of mismanagement, toxicity, and conditions that impacted their mental health. Okay, CNN's contributed to this article. Okay. So yes, rather than, uphold traditional values and traditions of beauty and youth and hope and so on and so forth, no, we're just going to get rid of it. We're just going to get rid of it. People are calling us names. People aren't taking us seriously anymore because we're putting men up in a women's competition. So we're just gonna drop it all. And we're all inclusive now. The best thing to do is to run away and destroy things. Sure. Poor Netherlands. Poor Netherlands. You talk about the degradation of one's own culture. We talk about like cultural appropriation and everything else. How about cultural degradation? How about cultural elimination? We talk about that very much? Not much, I don't think. Let's see. Lone Berserker. We are all equal. We are all winners. No contest should exist. So to not offend every human. Yeah. It's very Harrison Bergeron. Let's Bergeron all of society, shall we? If you do not know the story of Harrison Bergeron, look it up. It's a short story. It kind of exemplifies most of the DEI movement, the equity movement, and so on. But yeah, let's just. There are no winners. There are no losers. Everybody's perfect in their own way. We'll never have competition again. No one has to feel bad or feel less than. We'll just eliminate all of that, and everybody will be happy that way. There'll be nothing to aspire to and nothing to overcome. It'll just be one long, boring pile of cultural gruel we'll all exist in. That's the way to solve the problems, as you know. Let's see. Participation trophy. Yay! I know. Here's your ribbon. You showed up. You get a prize. There you go. There, pat on the head. There. Never try any harder. Never overcome adversity. There's no we'll make sure you never have to have any obstacles in life. Everything, you're already a winner. And anybody who says otherwise is a hater, because they just don't understand. Ay, caramba. Well, speaking of winners, losers, another time, let's talk about a couple of real losers. Because these guys, boy, I got to tell you, there's some tragedies and some personal mistakes that I don't have any problem laughing at, even if they end up in death. I know, kind of morbid, but here we go. 2 suspects carrying explosives on a motorcycle killed in a blast near a police station in Pakistan. Oh, what were these poor wayward individuals doing? I mean, what happened? I mean, did their motorcycle have some kind of technical problem or something? No. An explosive device carried on a motorcycle by 2 suspected militants in restive southwestern Pakistan ignited prematurely near a police station on Monday, killing the suspects. The blast happened in, appropriately named enough, Qilla Abdullah. That sounds like a boxer or maybe a WWF contestant. Qilla Abdullah, a town 75 kilometers north of Quetta, the provincial capital of Balochistan. I'm probably mispronouncing that as well. Local police officer Ghulam Rasool said the men were near the Mezai police station when the blast took place. He said officers were still investigating to determine whether either of the suspects was a suicide bomber targeting the police station. Either they were or they were just going to toss the sucker as they drove by. Either way. Rasool provided no further details. Balochistan, for decades, has been the scene of a low-level insurgency by small separatist groups demanding independence from the federal government and a greater share in the region's natural resources, such as gas and oil. Militants from the Pakistani Taliban and the Islamic State group are also active in the province. Last month, a suicide bomber dispatched by the outlawed Balochistan Liberation Army blew himself up at a train station in Quetta, killing 26 people, including soldiers and railway staff, in one of the deadly recent attacks. Well, golly gee, I'm glad that these guys were idiots, and I'm glad nobody else apparently was hurt. But, Darwin Award right there. Thank you, JB. Oh man, just reminded me of the movie Four Lions. You're gonna have to remind me about Four Lions. I don't know that I'll have to. I remember. What was it? Replacement Lions or whatever it was. Or there was that movie with Haley Joel Osment. Something Lions. I'm suddenly forgetting. And I think who else was in that? A couple of old guys. Was Michael Caine? Was Michael Caine in that movie? I don't remember. But yeah, those lions, Four Lions, Three Kings, something. You have to sort me out on that one. Let's see, Kiro Soldier. I think Polly might like this article. Oh, is Polly big on Darwin Award winners? Secondhand Lions, that's what it was. Roasted Opinions, thank you so much. That's what it was. That's what it was. He did more than one movie? What, Haley Joel Osment? Yeah. He did several movies. There was Sixth Sense. There was Pay It Forward, if I'm not mistaken. Also Secondhand Lions and several other things. He was in The Boys for an episode or 3 in the first season. Thank you again, JB. Four Lions is about 4 wannabe terrorists in the UK. Oh, okay. Now that you say that, it rings a distant bell. I might have to check that one out. But yeah. Oh yeah, Robert Duvall and Michael Caine. Michael Caine. You might not know this, but I'm Michael Caine. That's the best Michael Caine impression I've got. I got nothing else. There's very few impressions I can do. I can do Kermit the Frog, a passing Bullwinkle, Elmo on a bad day. But yeah, Michael Caine, not so much. But yeah, so there's some happy news. Idiots being idiots and nobody else got hurt. If you have to have a news about an explosive device going off, that's kind of the best version of it, I suppose. I mean, the ideal version would be it goes off, they survive, perhaps, severely wounded, but they get to be prosecuted for their crimes or something. But, oh well. I'll take that over the alternative, I suppose. Let's see. Who's next on the list? Shall we do... Oh, since we're in a true crime territory, let's continue on that theme a little bit. This story comes to us from Angelverse on the Discord server. Thank you, Angelverse, for posting this one. Hadn't heard about this. Man freed from jail after 24 years and awarded $6 million from the city commits murder. Because, once you've been given the biggest second chance anybody could ask for, why not throw it all away? Sure. A man who was freed from jail and awarded $6 million after being quote-unquote wrongfully convicted of murder has done the unthinkable after being released. For 24 years, Sean Thomas was in prison for a crime he says he did not commit. The 50-year-old was locked up for life back in 1992 after being found guilty of the 1990 robbery and murder of a businessman in Philadelphia. However, in 2017, his conviction was overturned, and he was exonerated after a judge saw issues with the police investigation and their interrogation tactics. The Pennsylvania Innocence Project also helped to secure his release after stating he was nowhere near the murder scene. Thomas received a whopping $4.1 million US, or $6.4 million Australian, payout from the city for the wrongful conviction, and for the last 7 years has been enjoying his freedom. But in a jaw-dropping twist, he has just admitted to the 2023 killing of a different man over a $1,200 drug debt, and now will likely go back to jail for the rest of his life. Where'd the $4 million go? Or is that Australian dollars and $1,200, what makes it even less? What? Thomas shot and killed Akeem Edwards, 38, back in January of 2023. Earlier this week, he pleaded guilty to the charge of third-degree murder and weapons offenses. He will be sentenced in February. The judge, Roxanne Covington, who was reportedly gobsmacked that Thomas, who is now a multi-millionaire, would kill someone over a relatively measly drug debt. Quote, "Are these facts true?" she asked Thomas after prosecutors explained how he tracked down and shot the victim in cold blood. Quote, "Yes, Your Honor," he replied, unquote. I'm wondering if it was a, like, respect thing. Like, was that the main motivation? I haven't read the rest of this article yet. So was it a respect thing? Like, the amount of money doesn't matter. It's about respect. The newspaper reported that Thomas allegedly told his girlfriend, Ketra Vesey, that he had been involved in at least 3 other homicides over the course of his life. I'm sure detectives would love to clear those cold cases. Whether this includes the 1990 murder he was originally sent to jail for is unknown. Oh, good gravy. Edward's loved ones spoke out against Thomas after the plea hearing. Quote, "There's not enough time for them to possibly give him," his sister Taisha Marshall said of Thomas. She also added that her brother was genuine and a loving father before he was murdered. Upon his release from prison in 2017, Thomas said he had, quote, "no animosity towards the police and planned to just move on forward," unquote, according to ABC News. He had also joined a network of other locals who were freed from prison after having their convictions overturned. Thomas's crimes were discovered after a federal informant told homicide detectives that he had discussed Edward's murder with him. Oh, so he didn't come forward of his own volition. He was found out after copping to it. Okay. The informant also claimed that he put out a hit on his girlfriend out of concern she might cooperate with investigators. What a prince this guy is. This led to a search of his home, where police discovered 5 guns and a Gap hoodie that resembled the one Edward's shooter wore. Thomas was then arrested and charged with illegal gun possession, but was released on bail. Why? He did not deny any of the claims in court earlier this week and pleaded guilty to 6 crimes, including third-degree murder, conspiracy, and illegal gun possession. For many years, Thomas was one of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project's most inspiring success stories. They have not made a public statement since his admission. Oh, did our golden boy turn out to be the criminal we said he wasn't? Oh, sorry, guys. Quote, "The mission of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project is to exonerate those convicted of crimes they did not commit, to prevent innocent people from being prosecuted and convicted, and to help those wrongfully convicted transition to freedom," unquote, they state on their website. The project was founded in 2008 by a group of lawyers as a non-profit mission under the leadership of David Richman and David Rodofsky. Since their inception, they have secured or helped to secure the exoneration, and unfortunately I have to put exoneration into quotes now, of 21 men and women, including Thomas. Did they, though? Did they? Good gravy. You get $4 million for what may, and I'll say may because I don't know. You get $4 million payout for a crime you may have actually committed. And then for the sake of $1,200, if not for other crimes involved, you throw it all away. Boy, genius like that only comes around once in a while. Once in a great while does genius like that come about. Good gravy. Tier Alexander, honor and glory. I suppose. I don't know about the glory part. But there you go. Ostzan, dang it, YouTube. Gave me a notification over a half hour late. Well, I can't do anything about YouTube. But I am also streaming on X. I don't think the X stream shows up until I go live. I can't do like a notification thing on X or a preview on X, as far as I know. I haven't figured it all out yet. But I'm also on X right now, so if for some reason YouTube's not doing you any favors, maybe X is better. I don't know. But Adam Myers, IQ is bell-shaped. Super genius is as rare as super not genius. It's true. Like I say, that kind of intelligence is rare. Thankfully, maybe. I don't know. But Random American, can we get the money back? I doubt it. I would guess that since he's been released in 2017, with that kind of genius, I bet most of that money's gone. Maybe that's why he went after that $1,200 debt, because he'd already blown $4 million in the ensuing years. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody told me that guy blew $4 million inside of 4 years. I would believe it. Or not more than 4 years now. Yeah, 9 years. Yeah, seriously. $4 million. Can you imagine having $4 million? How, if you had to say, it's like if I gave you $4 million and I said, okay, you have to plan out using this money to survive for the next 9 years. I bet most of you would be able to say, I could survive on that the rest of my life. because at the end of the day, our actual expenses are probably fairly low. There was this, this is many, many years ago, but there was this story of, I don't even remember the guy's name. He was a basketball player, and his house was broken into. And the only thing that was stolen was, and I'm only probably slightly paraphrasing here, 6 watches. 6 watches. And I'm like, 6 watches? That's it? Okay. What was the value of these 6 watches? $300,000. And I'm thinking to myself, what? It is inconceivable. I'll go all Princess Bride on this. Inconceivable to me how someone could see it justified to spend $300,000 on anything in particular, right, of one category, unless it's like, I guess, healthcare or a house or something. But watches? But yeah, this guy had $300,000 to drop just on some watches. And I thought, if somebody gave me $300,000, how could I space that out to basically live off of for, I at the time I calculated what are my bare bones expenses over a year's time. Like if I just had to account for, rent and utilities and just food in a year's time, how much would that cost me? And I tried to be okay. I did cost plus after fashion because you never know what kind of other expenses might come up. So I said, okay. And I figured out the math. I was like, okay, I could live comfortably without any frills or anything else going on about $30,000 a year. I could probably do that. And that's also, again, overestimating slightly for the variances of life and prices and things. So $30,000. So on that basis, I could conceivably, barring inflation, of course, do 10 years on what it cost that guy for his 6 watches. It's just insane to me what people spend on things and how much people spend on ridiculous stuff. It just boggles the mind. Those of you that live on a budget, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody with $4 million, if they get desperate enough for a $1,200 debt, what is wrong? What is wrong? People need to learn financial literacy. Everybody needs to get the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. Learn some basics about how to manage your finances. Financial literacy should be a requirement in public education. It should be something that you have to pass. You have to be given. It should be a prerequisite for any high school diploma. Some kind of financial literacy or personal money management class or something. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Roasted opinions. Pay off my taxes, pay off all my debts, make some home improvements, and invest the rest. Exactly. Clear yourself of everything that's hanging over you and invest in the future. Right? And don't go for the frivolous stuff. Anyway, Richest Man in Babylon. If you guys have not heard of that book, it is a small book. It's an old book. It's relatively cheap. You can probably get it on Kindle if you have a Kindle or something. Pass that on to any high school graduate. If they're not already financially literate, pass that on and tell them to read it. It's not a very long read. It's not a very thick read, but it's got a lot of great basic advice in there. Anyway, that aside, speaking of finances, or shall we keep on with the true crime stuff? Yeah, let's talk about the true crime stuff for a second here. See if I can bring this one up. Do you guys remember the Duke lacrosse case? Yeah, this was several years ago. We had several stories like this around that time. We had the Duke lacrosse case. We had the University of Virginia, the UVA case from Rolling Stone. Then there was Mattress Girl. We had several of these stories of these outlandish and crazy and just sounding like horror stories of sexual assault and rape on college campuses and elsewise. Well, this was one of the bigger ones. And everybody knew it was nonsense, thankfully, fairly early on in the process, but still, where those accused had their lives practically ruined and ripped apart. But now, finally, years after the fact, the hoaxer admits that she lied. Well, good on her, I guess. Woman behind infamous Duke lacrosse rape accusations admits she lied. The case against 3 white players dominated national news for months, but later unraveled. On a recent podcast, Crystal Mangum revisited that time. The stripper who accused Duke University lacrosse players of gang raping her insisted in her 2008 memoir that she had been attacked a year after authorities determined she had lied and dropped the charges against her alleged assailants. Quote, I depended on the police investigators and hoped that one of the people at the party would be willing to come forward and tell the truth about what went on that night, Crystal Mangum wrote in the book. Quote, something did happen, something that would change my life and the lives of countless others for as long as we all live, unquote. Well, that part was correct. That part is correct. When you file false accusations, when you bear false witness against someone, yeah, that tends to change lives. A few lines earlier, she wrote, quote, I will never say that nothing at all happened that night, unquote. Okay. 16 years after those words were published, Mangum is saying that nothing at all happened that night. In an episode of the online interview show Let's Talk with Kat, I'm learning about all these podcasts that I've never heard of before in recent times, like between Call Her Daddy and Let's Talk with Kat and The Very Good Podcast. I just learned about that one the other day. It's amazing. I hope someday to be one of those podcasts or YouTube channels that somebody just learns about out of the blue. And like, oh, this has been going on for years? Maybe not. Released Wednesday, Mangum, 46, said she lied about being gang raped by the lacrosse players after they hired her to strip at their party, an accusation that sparked a national scandal and forced a reckoning across the country about sexual assault on college campuses. Again, in addition to the Rolling Stone article, in addition to Mattress Girl, on and on. Quote, I testified falsely against them by saying that they raped me when they didn't, and that was wrong, she told interviewer Katrina De Pascal on November 13th. Quote, and I betrayed the trust of a lot of other people who believed in me and made up a story that wasn't true because I wanted validation from people and not from God, unquote. Okay, and that was wrong. Well, great. But the account Mangum gave in 2006 and again in her memoir, Last Dance for Grace, was about how she'd showed up to the house in Durham, North Carolina on March 13th, 2006, having been hired to dance for 6 men at a bachelor party, only to find she would be performing for roughly 40 men in their late teens and early 20s. Things quickly devolved, Mangum alleged at the time. She said in her book that some of the men, mostly white, shouted racial slurs at her. Sure, I totally believe you. Mangum is black. No kidding. And she tried to flee. Some of them grabbed her, holding her in place as they took turns raping her, she wrote, adding, quote, I genuinely believed I was going to die in there, but I did not want to, unquote. Okay. Mangum reported the alleged incident to Durham police, and 3 Duke lacrosse players were eventually indicted on charges of first-degree rape, with absolutely no evidence save for her claim. And it's ladies like these that screw everything up for actual victims. You need something more. I mean, you admittedly, in all cases, need something more than just someone saying so. But, yeah, and the police and the judge and all this is just... If you guys don't know about or remember this scandal, it is an absolute... You want to talk about travesty of justice. The case dominated national news for months. Major stories appeared in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Associated Press, USA Today, ABC News, Newsweek, ESPN, and the Washington Post. The CBS News program 60 Minutes ran 5 segments about the case, according to Duke University. The university declined to comment on Mangum's recent admission. Yeah, what was the university's response to all this, by the way? But as the months went by, the case against the lacrosse players unraveled. Well, it should have unraveled the night of. Unfortunately for the players, it didn't. After the State Bar Association filed ethics charges against the prosecutor handling the case, Durham County District Attorney Mike Nifong, accusing him of withholding evidence and making inflammatory statements, then North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper took over. Nifong, who resigned, was eventually disbarred and held in criminal contempt for lying to a judge about the case. 3 months after taking over the case, Cooper dismissed the charges against the lacrosse players. In doing so, he said there had been a, quote, rush to accuse, unquote, and that, quote, there were many points in this case where caution would have served justice better than bravado, unquote. That kind of underscores most of the social justice, cancel culture, everything of the last 10 years or so, in particular, even though this is now a 20-year-long case. In 2014, those three players, Dave Evans, Reed Siegelman, and Colin Finnerty, settled lawsuits against the city of Durham and the university. Yeah, and their lives were destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Here's the thing. I have had the experience, and perhaps you have too, and if you have my sympathies. I have had the experience of being accused of something I did not do and being held to account for it regardless. Eventually, I was able to clear mine. I'm not talking about like a criminal case or something, but just without going into details. You know, it's the worst thing ever. It is a fate I would not wish upon my worst enemy. You know why? Well, first and foremost, because even if you have the worst person in the world and you accuse them of something terrible they did not do and you try to hold them to account for it, they become a legitimate victim of your lie. And you make them a sympathetic figure in the first place. Okay, if somebody is terrible, then let that terribleness visit upon them in its own time. But yeah, holding somebody to account for something they did not do, we're talking like witch trial stuff here. It's the worst thing ever. And my situation was peanuts compared to what these guys had to go through. I can't even imagine the nightmare of their lives at that time and afterwards. And their ability to trust people or to feel comfortable going outside or who knows what. This lady did this to them for nothing. For nothing. And she got paid for it. She got a book deal and the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, Mangum found herself once again entangled in the criminal justice system. In 2013, she was sentenced up to 18 years for murdering her boyfriend 2 years earlier. She has been held in North Carolina prisons ever since. Officials expect to release her in 2026. Why? For murder? She serves 13 years for murder? Why? None of the three former lacrosse players responded to requests for comment from the Post. Yeah, because they want to get past this. We've already known that they were falsely accused years ago. But their online presence suggests they've moved on after enduring what one described as a year that was robbed from our lives. Well, I promise you it was more than a year. With everything and the fallout thereof and the psychological damage, it was more than a year. Let's see. Evans graduated from Duke with a bachelor's in economics. Siegelman transferred to Brown University, where he continued to play lacrosse and graduated with a bachelor's in history and public policy. Finnerty also left Duke after the scandal, transferring to Loyola University, Maryland, where he played lacrosse and was eventually named captain. He graduated with a bachelor's degree and eventually got an MBA from Columbia Business School in 2020. Good. Let's see. Quote, although Miss Mangum's admission is long overdue, it does put the final layer of validation on the unequivocal innocence of these three fine men. Yeah, no. Why this woman is going to be released from prison at all, I don't know. Why she isn't or can't, I guess maybe it's like, statute of limitations or something. But she should be criminally prosecuted. If not criminally prosecuted, she definitely should be civilly prosecuted by the three players if she hasn't already been. She doesn't deserve anything like rest or peace from all this. Especially for killing somebody as well. Good gravy. Good gravy. Advocates Daily, statute of limitations on false accusations should only start as of the moment you make you last make the accusation, not the first. I agree. It should be an ongoing crime. It should reset the clock every time that you keep making that accusation. Yeah, it doesn't stop when it first starts. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Ernest P. Worrell. Let's see. A Shadow Claw. It's an injustice that she gets away with this. Yeah, effectively. And she's going to be released from prison after murdering something. What? I don't understand these things. I don't understand any of these things. It doesn't make any sense. Roan Harushan. Oh, because you're talking about something else. I apologize. I thought it was something to me. Curacao, it doesn't matter, Scott, but the colleges and universities move quickly to convict based solely on... Yeah, because they're more concerned with lawsuits, they're more concerned with PR than they are with justice. And of course, colleges and universities, they don't have to follow any kind of due process in their decisions. They can just take someone's accusation, use that as evidence, and then make a decision. Put somebody on academic probation or expel them or who knows what else, and deal with the consequences later. because they'd rather be wrong and have to pay a fine or something than risk putting somebody through something falsely. It's a cost-benefit analysis. There's something that makes no sense to me whatsoever. I mean, putting a stain on somebody's reputation for nothing. Worst fate. Worst fate. Your hair looks nice this morning. Well, thank you. I think the sunrise in the background kind of sets off my strawberry blonde or my dirty blonde hair, whatever that is. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. What else do we got? Let's see. Speaking of false stories. Well, don't do that one. Let's do this one. So, those of you who are veterans of my channel, or you just watched the double feature TED Excellence from 2 weeks ago, you may recall the name McKinsey and Company. Yes, McKinsey and Company. The survey statistician think tank or whatever that produced a report in 2015 that every single DEI advocate, consultant, executive still uses to justify their nonsense. Well, fortunately, McKinsey and Company have been held to account for helping to push a different kind of poison on society. McKinsey and Company agrees to pay $650 million for helping Purdue Pharma boost opioid sales. And it couldn't happen to a nicer think tank. McKinsey and Company consulting firm has agreed to pay $650 million to settle a federal investigation into its work to help opioids manufacturer Purdue Pharma boost the sales of the highly addictive drug OxyContin, according to court papers filed in Virginia on Friday. As part of the deal with the U.S. Justice Department, McKinsey will avoid prosecution on criminal charges, which is decidedly unfortunate, and I hate the fact that all these companies and organizations get to avoid criminal charges by paying a fee. Pay to get out of a criminal charge. Ugh. This is something that's got to change. This is something that really, really, really needs to change. You want to get my goat more than anything else. People getting out of... We talk about someone being accused of something they did not do and being held to account for it. The opposite side of that coin is actually doing something terrible and buying your way out of it. Anyway, as part of the deal with the U.S. Justice Department, McKinsey will avoid prosecution on criminal charges if it pays the sum and follows certain conditions for 5 years, including ceasing any work on the sale, marketing, or promotion of controlled substances. Oh, boo-hoo. Prosecute them criminally. Don't pay a fine. If you break the law, there has to be some criminal fallout. Somebody needs to go to jail. If you can buy your way out of trouble, what is the point? Anyway, a former McKinsey senior partner, Martin Elling, has also agreed to plead guilty to obstruction of justice for deleting documents from his laptop after he became aware of investigations into Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin that was then a client, according to the filings. A lawyer for Elling declined to comment Friday. So wait, does he get to avoid criminal prosecution as well? So he's pleading guilty to obstruction of justice. You mean obstruction of justice? You mean destruction of evidence? Is he going to be sentenced to something? Or are all criminal charges going by the wayside because of the fine being paid? McKinsey said in a statement on Friday that it's deeply sorry for its work for Purdue Pharma. Quote, "We should have appreciated the harm opioids were causing in our society, and we should not have undertaken sales and marketing work for Purdue Pharma," the company said. Yeah, but the money was too good, wasn't it? And now that money is being used to get yourself out. Here's the thing. Money is fungible. So the $650 million fine the McKinsey is paying to get out of any criminal prosecution, some or all of that money effectively is coming from Purdue Pharma. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? You can go along and help out a criminal drug cartel for years with the money that you're making from them to eventually buy your way out of trouble. Ah, what a country. We should have appreciated the harm opioids were causing in our society, and we should not have undertaken sales and marketing work for Purdue Pharma. Quote, "This terrible public health crisis and our past work for opioid manufacturers will always be a source of profound regret for our firm." I think it's more a regret you got caught more a regret that you had to pay anything. I just got a feeling. It's the latest effort by federal prosecutors to hold accountable companies officials say help fuel the U.S. addiction and overdose crisis, with opioids linked to more than 80,000 annual deaths in some recent years. Hold accountable? By having them pay their way out of trouble. If there's one major reform I hope comes to the Department of Justice under Donald Trump, it's stuff like this stopping full. Because I cannot stand it when this stuff happens. Paying your way out of criminal prosecution. If anyone else, if a single person in life had done anything like what McKinsey did as an organization, if you or I, right, did any of this stuff, we'd be held to account. We'd go to jail. We couldn't buy our way out of it. Companies and corporations being able to pay their way out of criminal consequences is the stupidest thing. Thank you, JB. Appreciate it very much. That is one thing they taught us in college. If the cost of the fine is less than the amount it costs to clean something up, for example, they'll just break the law. Not right, just what happens. Yeah. You see this a lot of time with, the dumping of chemical waste, right? The amount of money it would take to actually clean up a dumping site or something is probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But the government is just going to charge you $10 million for the fine. Great. So we'll keep dumping because, the cost to actually have to clean this up is more than what the fine we're going to have to pay anyway. The only way you can try to mitigate this stuff from happening again is by putting people in jail. If the people in charge of these companies know that there is a Damocles sword hanging over their head of a criminal sentence of years away from their families for doing stuff like this, you set an example and you say loud and clear, not only is your company going to pay a fine, but somebody at the top is going to go to jail. Then they'll think twice. Not this write a check and get out of jail free card BS. That stuff needs to happen more. It doesn't happen enough. Linked to more than 80,000 annual deaths in some recent years. For the past decade, most of them have been attributed to illicit fentanyl, which is laced in many illegal drugs. Earlier in the epidemic, prescription pills were the primary cause of death. Over the past 8 years, drug makers, wholesalers, and pharmacies have agreed to about $50 billion worth of settlements with governments, with most of the money required to be used to fight the crisis. $50 billion. How much did the pharmaceutical companies in total make on opioids? Not just Purdue. You can bet you it was more than that. Purdue paid McKinsey more than $93 million over 15 years for several products, including how to improve revenue from OxyContin. Prosecutors say McKinsey, quote, knew the risk and dangers, unquote, of OxyContin, and knew that Purdue pharma executives had previously pleaded guilty to crimes related to the promotion of the drug, but decided to work with the opioid manufacturer anyway. McKinsey. The DEI champions. One of the jobs for McKinsey, the paper said, was to identify which prescribers would generate the most additional prescriptions if Purdue salespeople focused on that. That resulted in prescriptions that were, quote, not for medically accepted indication, were unsafe, ineffective, and medically unnecessary, and they were often diverted for uses that lacked a legitimate medical purpose, unquote, the filing said. I could almost take everything that they're charging McKinsey with in this and just translate it straight over to DEI arguments, and would make just as much sense. This was not hypothetical. Sorry, we'll try that again. This was not hypothetical. Christopher Kavanaugh, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Virginia. Christopher Kavanaugh said, okay, AP, you said his name once. You don't need to say it twice. I'll read it again just for entertainment purposes. Quote, this was not hypothetical, unquote. Christopher Kavanaugh, comma, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Virginia Christopher Kavanaugh said in a news conference in Boston on Friday. Quote, this was not just marketing. It was a strategy. It was executed and it worked, unquote. During work to turbocharge Purdue sales in 2013 after a drop in business, McKinsey consultants accompanied Purdue sales representatives on visits to prescribers and pharmacies to gather information. In a note about one ride-along, a McKinsey consultant said one pharmacist had a gun, quote, and was shaking. Abuse is definitely a huge issue, unquote. The pharmacist... Wait, I want to know more about that story. Like the pharmacist had a gun, like for protection or just at hand? Okay, the company continued looking for ways to increase OxyContin sales according to court papers. In 2014, McKinsey identified some small clinics that were writing more opioid prescriptions than entire hospital systems and suggested they be targeted for more sales, the court filing said. And just a year later, McKinsey would be the company to promote DEI in their classic paper, or survey, sorry. The company also tried to help Purdue get a say in shaping federal rules intended to ensure the benefits of addictive prescription drugs outweighed the risks. The government said in its new filings that that resulted in making high-dose OxyContin subject to the same oversight as lower-dose opioids and made training for prescribers voluntary rather than mandatory. Okay, well, you can't lay that completely at the feet of McKinsey, because if the government agreed to it, what were they getting out of the deal? Since 2021, McKinsey has agreed to pay state and local governments about $765 million in settlements for its role in advising businesses on how to sell more of the powerful prescription painkillers amid a national opioid crisis. The firm also agreed last year to pay healthcare funds and insurance companies $78 million. Good! McKinsey should be out of business as far as I'm concerned. They should be bankrupt because they are ethically and morally bankrupt to begin with. So if they get fined into oblivion out of this, great. But still, someone should go to jail. Federal authorities say the deal represents the first time a management consulting firm is being held accountable like this for advising a client to break the law. Well, aiding and abetting, what can I tell you? Quote, if a consulting first conspires with a client to engage in criminal conduct, the fact that you're an outside consultant will not protect you, unquote, said Joshua Levy, U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. But a big paycheck will protect you from criminal consequences. They paid their way out of criminal prosecution. Unless that one guy for destroying evidence is going to finally face charges or something, but that's... Anyway, some advocates say the opioid crisis was touched off when Purdue Pharma's OxyContin hit the market in 1996. Certainly didn't help. 3 Purdue executives pleaded guilty to misbranding charges in 2007, and the company agreed to pay a fine. The company pleaded guilty to criminal charges in 2020 and agreed to $8.3 billion in penalties and forfeitures, most of which will be waived as long as it executes a settlement through bankruptcy court that is still in the works. And again, no one is going to jail. They paid their way out of consequence. What a world. What a world. Jill Powers, opioids are no joke. They feed the next step to heroin. Yeah, and between heroin or just opioids alone, destroy your body, destroy your life, destroy your family, destroy your finances. Addiction is a scary, scary thing. And and it just, these guys got away, at least by extension, with shall I say murder? Prosecute and send these guys to jail. Fines should not pay your way out of criminal consequences. Just shouldn't. Not for something like this, especially not on this scale. You know, how many of the executives involved in the 2008 financial crash went to jail? Oh yeah, that's right. Like what, one guy somewhere? The people in charge got away with it. They paid a fine. They agreed to some self-regulations or something. What is the lesson we are teaching not only our society, but the oncoming generations about consequence and personal responsibility when we do stuff like this? Right. This kind of decision-making is a reflection and a model for what people are going to behave like in the future. If you do not have consequences for your actions, if you don't hold people responsible, this equity culture is going to continue to destroy more and more people's lives. If it's just like, I just have to pay a fine to get out of it. Oh, boy. All right. And lastly, our last story of the day. I saw this one posted on Twitter the other day. It's an opinion piece from The Washington Post. And it was talking about something about trans rights and Kamala Harris. And I thought, okay, why not? Let's take a look. Liberals should defend civil rights, not cower based on election results. Okay. How we treat transgender Americans and teach U.S. history are neither trivial matters nor distractions. And I think it was that second part of the subheading that caught my attention, teach U.S. history. I've been conditioned, I have to admit it. My first thought was, is this a critical race theory analysis or argument or something? Also, I'm still waiting for somebody to explain to me, what is a transgender right? Like, well, we have to fight for transgender right. What is a transgender right explicitly? Like under law or proposed in law? What is a transgender right? Since Vice President Kamala Harris's election defeat last month, a new talking point has become increasingly prominent among Democratic politicians and strategists, both centrists and progressives. Republican efforts to limit transgender rights, these Democrats argue, are a distraction, an attempt to essentially trick Democrats into focusing on issues that don't affect most Americans. Again, what do you mean by limit transgender rights? All I hear about is, let's not medically experiment on children. That's usually most of the thrust of the argument. Hey, these innocent children that are being conditioned and, I'll use a different G word for YouTube's sake, guided into believing they possess gender dysphoria at an age where they don't know right from left. I thought that was the issue, but now we're talking about transgender rights. And this is the opinion piece speaker or writer talking here. I'm very leery of this distraction thinking. It's true that around election time, Republican politicians act as though transgender girls playing sports, you mean boys playing in girls' sports, or the teaching of critical race. Hey! I hadn't read this article ahead of time. I did not know what he was going to say. I'm going to take the W anyway. Yeah, when we start talking about teaching real U.S. history, critical race theory can't be far behind. Act as though transgender girls playing sports or the teaching of critical race theory are the most important issues in America. I don't know if you know this, but immigration, the economy, and our, let's say, foreign relations were the biggest issues in America. You seem to be focusing on the actual less important matters to most Americans. But they're really important to you, apparently. Are the most important issues in America because they know liberal positions on some of these matters are unpopular. Well, why is that, do you think? Setting aside the most important category, why are they unpopular? But how we treat transgender Americans or teach U.S. history are not trivial matters. Well, by your own logic, they're not trivial because you just told us that Republicans are convincing people these are the most important issues. And you have a very confusing message here. Okay. They are fundamental questions of equality and human dignity as well as policy. Okay. Tell me what is a transgender right that is currently being denied? And I'm not being sarcastic or anything when I ask that question. I'm being sincere because I don't know. And I've yet to have anybody explain to me what that is. What is a transgender right as opposed to the right of any quote unquote, since we're separating out, any quote unquote regular person? Minority groups and their interests should be forcefully defended by Democratic politicians who don't live in swing areas and, more important, by progressive activist groups, left-leaning news organizations, and other parts of our broader civil society. But do you mean to tell me that left-leaning news organizations have not been forcefully defending these minority groups' interests or proposed interests? Are you telling me the left-leaning media has not been going full bore on defending critical race theory or the idea of transgender rights? What world do you live in? After being chosen last week as the new chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Representative Greg Casar, if I'm saying that correctly, of Texas, told NBC News, quote, "The progressive movement needs to change. We need to reemphasize core economic issues every time some of these culture war issues are brought up," unquote. Yes, a giant cold bucket of water was dumped on the Democratic and progressive movement because of the election, wherein Donald Trump not only got the Electoral College win, but the popular vote. Suddenly it's becoming clear that modern progressivism isn't actually popular, and it's not going to win any further elections if you keep pushing it. Now I need to start asking why that is. Quote, "So when we hear Republicans attacking queer Americans again," who's this? "I think the progressive response needs to be that a trans person didn't deny your health insurance claim, a big corporation did, with Republican help. We need to connect the dots for people that the Republican Party obsession with these culture war issues is driven by Republicans' desire to distract voters and have them look away while Republicans pick their pocket," unquote, he added. You guys are not getting the message here, are you? These culture war issues. Okay. Democrats have used these issues to divide people and put up a moral superiority to try to push through some of the most regressive nonsense. Critical race theory is not an advancement in society. It is going backwards. But you guys can't see that. You guys aren't willing to admit that. And you're putting it into schools. Okay, the part that you're not mentioning here is the fact that all of this stuff is being pushed into public schools. It's being pushed upon the next generation of voters, the next generation of people's children. Are you going to talk about that element? Because that's where this is all coming in. CRT and transgender issues and everything, most of this comes down to the fact that it's being pushed onto children. At least admit to that part of it. Casar isn't an establishment Democrat trying to pass the buck for his wing of the party's role in Harris's defeat, isn't he? Or a centrist who just hates the party's left. Before being elected to the Austin City Council and then Congress, he was a labor rights activist, helping construction workers get longer breaks from the Texas heat while on their jobs. "I have no beef with him," this is the author talking. "America would be better off if we had 535 Greg Casars in Congress." No, he wouldn't. You want a hive mind in Congress? Well, actually, you probably do. I take it back, you probably do. And the broader point he is making is correct. Republicans are able to win in swing areas while pushing an economic agenda, tax cuts for the wealthy, Medicaid cuts, that polls suggest most voters strongly oppose, in part because the GOP turns elections into referendums on social and cultural issues on which Americans are more closely divided or favor the conservative position. Dude, do you understand the economy, stupid? Under Biden, everybody is paying 3 times the price for eggs that they were under Trump. It's not that complicated. But the other stuff that Biden and his regime were bringing into play in policies regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, spending on foreign wars, all these moral positions on things that have nothing to do with anybody's well-being in America, but in other countries, and on and on. Okay, so you're still going to live with your fingers in your ears, your eyes closed, la 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 la. Okay, all right. This is a long-standing Republican strategy. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan tapped into voter frustrations with increased school integration and affirmative action while pursuing more conservative economic agendas. Why do you bring up the economy secondarily to that? School integration and affirmative action. Okay, so Casar and other Democrats are right that the party needs to point out when Republican officials are trying to downplay their fiscal conservatism. Yes! I mean, if they're actually hypocrites in something, then yes, that's what you're... This is supposedly the promise of the two-party system, or the multi-party system, is that there will be, at least rhetorically speaking, a check and balance on one's sincerity versus their actions and deeds, etc. Sure, if you've got some evidence of some hypocrisy, go for it. I'm all for pointing out that Republicans are being hypocrites on the issues they say they stand for, and vice versa with the Democrats. Fine. But you don't seem to understand why people are against these things that you're complaining about. Now, I haven't read this article, and there's not much left in it, but I'm really wondering, is he going to mention which particular age demographic these things are being pushed on that has people concerned the most? By casting Republicans' positions on social issues as mere distractions minimizes what conservatives are doing. Conservatives are doing? You mean like pointing out completely displaced, nonsensical, and even destructive elements into public schools? What? There is a focused, coordinated agenda on social issues that many Republican officials are just as committed to as cutting taxes. Sure. Okay, Republican-led states across the country are severely curtailing abortion rights and access. Well, that is their right because it's gone back to the states. And they are banning transgender Americans from getting the health care they want. Okay, stop. What age demographic are you referring to? Are you referring to fully legal adults? Or are you talking about minor children? Okay. This is where we'd be circling leaves out vital context on the TEDx bingo card. You're not being honest about what the concerns are or where the concerns are centered, are you? And if you're not being honest about these things, I can't take you seriously. They are banning transgender Americans from getting the health care they want, participating in sports, and even using public bathrooms. Are those rights, by the way? Does a man have a right to play on a girls' sports team? Does a man have a right to use a women's bathroom? Does a child have a right to lifelong consequence medical experimentation under the guidance of questionable parenting and medical practices? They are restricting or eliminating Black history, sociology, and other courses that challenge conservative doctrines, as well as programs to increase diversity and inclusion on campuses and in the workplace. Why? What is their concern? Now we're getting into the persuasive essay territory here, and we already know that we have an unreliable narrator in our author because he's leaving out vital context. Why are they opposing these things? What are their arguments and justifications for doing so? Are they legitimate? Do they have a point? Are you willing to give voice to the opposition and then try to trounce it with your own points? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you are not arguing in good faith. Democrats aren't going to be able to sit out these fights on social issues because Republicans are full steam ahead on them. No, they can't sit out on them because they've built their entire political and social identity around these issues for the last 10 years. DEI is the bedrock of our nation. We're a nation of immigrants and diversity. Anybody who would say otherwise is obviously anti-American. They can't sit it out because this is all they've got. This is all they've been pushing since 2016. Of course they can't sit out on it. If they do, they'd be admitting that they were wrong the whole time, or they were pushing nonsense. And that would hurt the party even more. So what do you suggest Democrats do? Democrats aren't going to be able to sit out on these fights on social issues because Republicans are full steam ahead on them. I'm not exactly sure how Harris should have responded to the barrage of Republican ads attacking her for pledging support for gender-affirming care for people in prison and undocumented immigrants in 2019. You're not sure? Why aren't you sure? How can you not know what she should have said? She was right to do so, wasn't she? You just said in the paragraph above that anyone opposing anything that has to do with transgender rights is in the wrong. And you know why. So how are you not sure what she should have said? Okay, but trying to duck the issue at first was probably a mistake. Probably a mistake? Well, it was a mistake to say it in the first place, but then not to stand by it or at least provide some reason as to why you changed your mind. Yeah, it makes you look like a flip-flopper, amongst other things. Then we have a parenthetical. It's worth noting that Trump campaign officials say their commercials linking Harris to President Joe Biden's economic policies were more damaging than ones in which Harris emphasized her pro-trans bona fides. Well, are they wrong? I said earlier, it's the economy, stupid. These social issues are important to a lot of people, but they're not the dividing line. In most instances, there is a common denominator that links all of us. It's the economy, stupid. Republicans banned Representative-elect Sarah McBride, the first transgender person elected to Congress, from using women's bathrooms in the Capitol even before she officially started her tenure. That's because Sarah McBride is a man. I don't know what to tell you. I assume the Trump administration will push a host of other anti-trans provisions next year. These are real issues happening to real people in American culture and society. You mean the people who are opposing the idea of having men in women's restrooms, or... Okay, even if Republicans are demagoguing them for political reasons. And Democrats aren't demagoguing them for political reasons on the opposite side of the equation? Okay. They are not just distractions, and liberals need to come up with real positions on them. Well, I thought you already had a real position. But men should be allowed in women's restrooms if they say they're female. That's your position, right? I'm obviously missing something. Whether children should be able to get gender-affirming care is being debated not only in the United States, but also in Europe. Yeah. I'm glad you finally admitted that that was the element that everybody has the most objection to. What's your position on that? Should they or should they not? Sports leagues are trying to figure out whether and when transgender athletes should be allowed to play in same-sex sports that match their gender identity. Except they're not same-sex sports if you let the opposite gender into that sport. I can't wait until somebody legitimately tries to put 4 grown men on a girls' football team. We're already seeing how that's all playing out in volleyball in a couple of stories I did last week. But that's a whole other thing, I suppose. The state of Florida is trying to reduce the number of students taking sociology classes so it can lay off sociology professors whom Republicans view as overtly left-wing. Well, is what they're teaching of any use to the students? What kind of sociology? Right? Like feminist studies or something? There's a certain ROI estimation that has to be taken here as well, like return on investment. If I'm paying some sociology teacher, professor, whatever, X hundred thousands of dollars per year, and we have a whole bunch of students graduating with degrees that mean nothing and take students nowhere, then maybe we should start changing what kind of subjects we offer for the better outcome from our students and society at large. Just a thought. And these issues matter. If transgender people can't go to bathrooms, they can go to bathrooms. They go to the bathroom that they're supposed to go to based on their sex. It's pretty easy. If transgender people can't go to bathrooms, which they can, play sports, which they can, and get health care based on their preferred gender identity, they can, if they are a grown legal adult. They are being denied civil rights. No, they are not. Okay, if I want to do something that I'm not allowed to do, I'm not being denied a civil right. I'm not allowed to go into a female bathroom and use their bathroom. It is not permitted. It suggests other things are going on. It is a gray area depending on the circumstances, right? It's like, well, if I'm having an emergency and there's a bathroom right there and the other one's 3 blocks away, well, I can't. Yeah, but that's not a civil right. get health care based on their preferred gender identity. You're talking about hormones for children. If you're a grown adult, you can get this treatment just about anywhere. If you're a minor child, that's the difference. Being denied their play sports. Ugh. America already has a terrible history of using bathroom restrictions to signal disapproval of a certain group. Black people in the Jim Crow era. Oh my God. Americans who are deeply informed about the country's history of anti-black racism tend to support policies that address remaining racial inequalities. Republicans oppose such policies, so they oppose greater education on racial issues too. No, they don't. Correct, accurate, factual education. Not biased, oh, by the way, you're still guilty for slavery because you're white education. You gonna bring up the 1619 Project by any chance? No? Thank you, Adam Myers. From 16 to 20% of sociologists are named Marxist, or self-named Marxist. Yeah. Yeah, what? Yeah, sociologists, he says. Yes, teaching what exactly? See how he leaves out all of these pertinent details as he goes on? Okay, back to the author. I understand that Democrats running in red or purple areas might not be able to be full-throated supporters on many of these social issues, particularly transgender rights, if they want to win elections. Okay, so understanding that, where do you go with it? People speaking for the whole party, such as Senate Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer of New York and even Kazar, might also be constrained. The same goes for Harris as a presidential candidate or future Democratic Oval Office hopefuls. Well, maybe you should listen to the people on this one. I know it's a rough idea, but maybe the people are speaking, both through their votes and their representatives over time. It's a thought. But there are thousands of Democratic officials at the local, state, and federal levels who have almost no chance of being defeated by a Republican in an election. Almost no chance? I don't know. I was told that Kamala Harris had almost no chance of being defeated. People might be becoming a little bit more wary of that certainty. Especially if you look at the swing, and this is me talking now, not the article. If you look at the swing in counties, specifically in California, between the 2020 election and the 2024 election. Now, California ultimately, electorally, went blue, as usual. But if you look at the county-by-county breakdown in voting demographics, there's a heck of a lot more red and pink in California in 2024 than in 2020. So, yeah, electorally, might still be able to rely on California for the Democrats. But things are changing. They can be full-throated defenders of transgender Americans and others from minority groups who are targets of the current Republican Party. Targets of the... the Republican Party is looking a heck of a lot more like a rainbow coalition these last several years, if you hadn't noticed. This is not a zero-sum situation. These Democrats can also be extremely populist on economic issues. Yeah, but can they be... Here's the thing. It's about credibility. If on the one hand, you're going to push the idea that children should be allowed to be guided into having medical experiments done on their bodies, but then you're also going to say, hey, our economy's not good. Some people might wonder as to your sanity in the general. So I don't know what to tell you. I am not suggesting that every liberal group must defend every DEI program or pro-transgender policy. Then what? Wait. No.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
You just made blanket statements about these issues. Blanket statements. Okay, I am not suggesting that every liberal group must defend every DEI program or pro-transgender policy. There are sincere policy disagreements on the details of these issues. Would you care to go over any in your article setting a moral determining factor on people for either backing up or not backing up these issues. Would you like to mention those? Would you like to have an honest conversation about these things? Or just say my way or the highway? Because that's what this article is. Oh, but okay, below the fold, A12, you suddenly mention, there are sincere policy disagreements on the details of these issues, but liberals should not be scared of defending their core values, one of which is aligning with groups that don't have much power in society. And yet you couldn't come up with a good response that Kamala Harris could have had regarding transgender surgeries for prisoners and illegal immigrants? Okay. Some center-left Democrats argue that the actions of left-leaning groups and Democrats in very liberal areas tar the whole party and make it harder for swing state Democrats to win. I think that's true. But our author says, I'm skeptical that this is true. I suspect voters are largely evaluating the candidates in their states, not what faraway activists are saying. Let me scroll up a little bit. I understand that Democrats running in red or purple states might not be able to be full-throated supporters on many of these social issues, particularly transgender rights, if they want to win elections. People speaking for the whole party, such as Senate Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer and even Kazar, might also be constrained. The same goes for Harris as a presidential candidate or future Democratic Oval Office hopefuls. I suspect voters are largely evaluating the candidates in their states, not what faraway activists are saying. Okay, and here's the thing. It's not faraway activists. I don't know if you know this. What have been the federal declarations on diversity, equity, and inclusion? What have been the federal declarations on transgender rights? What kind of activities and memes have occurred on the White House lawn in the last couple of years? What has happened with the people, many people, being appointed to federal positions in the Biden government? These are not far-away activists. These are not separate one from another. Okay? Actions speak louder than words, and we have seen this at the federal level. What are you talking about? Oh, well, you know, that stuff's just on the fringe, guys. It's just over there. I represent the Democratic Party who's sane. Either the Democratic Party needs to split into two completely different entities, or you're going to have to admit that the entire Democratic Party is an absolute shambles and has been for years. I don't know what to tell you. I think that middle of the road, let's say conservative Democrats, need to start their own party. The far left, insane progressive Democratic left, I said it twice, I didn't mean to, but either way, should be its own thing at this point. It is so out there. It is so fringe as to even what the most reasonable Democrat believes these days that really the Democratic Party needs to split. There needs to be a clear cut between the two. And this guy's making a very good argument for that. And the notion that ACLU lawyers or members of Congress from Massachusetts should prioritize their guesses of what will motivate swing voters in Wisconsin every 2 years instead of strongly defending the rights of transgender people or immigrants is crazy. Democrats running in swing districts and states are accountable to those voters. Why do you bring up immigrants along with transgender people? You mean illegal immigrants? Nobody's got an issue with legal immigrants. Stop conflating these things together as though they're the same. Two different demographics. Two different situations. Democrats running in swing states and states are accountable. Swing districts and states are accountable to these voters. But 75 million people, the number who voted for Harris, should not be acting like political strategists, weighing whether to grant people basic dignity and equality against polling data. should not be acting like political strategists. They had a vote, and you don't know what they were thinking. There is so much ambiguity to a vote for a particular candidate. Why are they voting for that person? Why is someone voting for Trump? This one vote, what can you tell about this person's motivation based on their vote? Oh, well, obviously they're a crazy, MAGA, racist, homophobic, National Socialist from 1930s Germany, obviously. Or they recall a time when the economy was a lot better and we weren't involved in so many wars and paying money out to foreign countries. Or a combination. They shouldn't be they are political strategists of their own stripe, whatever it is. They should not be acting like. So you want to tell the voters what they can or cannot vote for on the basis of what they do or don't? What are you talking about? Instead, most liberals should assume the role of activists and organizers. How's that worked out for you over the last 8 years? Seriously, how has that worked out for the Democratic Party over the last 8 years? Instead, most liberals should assume the role of activists and organizers working collectively to defend the civil rights of all, except for those demographics we don't like because of the way that they look. I don't know if you know how DEI works. Many people on the left think fondly of the civil rights protests of the 1960s. Yeah, because they like to align themselves with an effort that was actually about equality, actually about crusading for civil rights, actually about giving people equal opportunity. They like to think of themselves as associated with that when they're actively working against the very foundation of that movement. They just don't want to see that. They don't want to admit to it. Nobody wants to tell them the truth. Because here's the truth of the matter. We are running out of things to fight over when it comes to equality in this country. That's why they have to keep making up problems to fight for. Is because under the law, for the most part, we're already there. It's a matter of enforcing the laws on the books the way that they were written in the first place. Now, I'm still waiting for the ERA to be passed, the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm all for the Equal Rights Amendment to be passed. I hope someday it is. But anyway, this is their time to live up to that tradition. Oh my God. 8 years of listening to DEI advocates trying to align themselves with being for equality up against the 1960s civil rights movement. This is their time to live up to that tradition. African Americans are very far from reaching full equality in America. How? Where? Under the law. Under the law where? The only thing we have any control over as a society, really, aside from our behavior, under the law where? Full equality in America? Well, I mean, I guess with affirmative action now gone and DEI on the decline, I guess full equality we might get back on that track again. Where race is irrelevant. That's how we get to full equality, making race irrelevant. But you don't want to make race irrelevant, do you? And the rights of immigrants, which kind of immigrants? Of course you don't say. The rights of immigrants and transgender Americans are in even more peril. These fights are not distractions from the real issues. They are some of the realest issues we face as a nation. You're not getting it. You're not getting it. You keep trying to make it sound like you're doing the good thing. You cannot look at it from the other angle. You cannot allow for the possibility you might be wrong. Everybody else is wrong and you're correct. Everyone else's opposition to these things is completely uninformed and bigoted and on and on and on, and you're in the right. You're on the right side of history, no matter what. You don't see the damage that has been done. You can't, because if you had to admit to the damage that has been done because of these policies and what it's done to the minds of children and it's done to our society, you'd actually have to understand that you are part of a major problem. You're promoting poison. You're like McKinsey and Company and OxyContin. You just don't see it. You don't want to allow for the possibility that it could be the case. But this is where we're at. This is where we're at. Let's see. Bostonier found the article. Yeah, I don't know if I had the link in the description or not. See, here's the thing. I have a subscription to the Washington Post. And so I have to show this up as a PDF, unfortunately, because there's information identifying me when I log into the Washington Post up at the top corner of the page. It shows off a screen name and such that is potential docs information, and I can't show that. So I did pay for this article. I just am not allowed by my own sense of privacy to show it on a website in larger font, and I apologize for that because of the identifiable information that they post at the top of the corner if you're logged into the accounts. That's why. So I apologize for that if you wanted to read it yourself. And yeah, you have to have a subscription of Washington Post to be able to read it. Maybe there's a Wayback Machine possibility out there for it, but otherwise. Let's see. Advocates, the endless linking of non-related issues as if they are going to fracture them beyond, as if they are is going to fracture them beyond repair. Well, this is why we have to demand specificity when people are talking about this stuff, right? And you can spot somebody trying to manipulate you when they are not being specific, when they leave things out, when they don't talk about the nuances of it. We're not talking about immigrants writ large. We're talking about illegal immigrants. Legal immigrants are legal. There's no controversy there. If you've gone through all the hoops to become a citizen or a legal resident or anything else, you're following the rules. What more can I ask of any neighbor than to follow the laws we all have to adhere to? It's the people who aren't. That's the issue. But they always use this word immigrants writ large, and it just drives me nuts. And they're still doing it. I've been complaining about this since basically my channel started, and they keep doing it. Faustonia, thanks for showing us the Washington Post article. Yeah, and again, apologies for the size of the font. I don't know if I can increase that in the future or anything. But yeah, the reason that I use PDFs for Washington Post articles specifically that I'm able to view is because they put my screen name or my login name right at the top of the corner, and anyway, I'm paranoid. What can I tell you? I don't want you guys to know the real me. Because if you knew the real me, well, I mean, wait. Never mind. San, thank you so much. Finally live. Take that, YouTube. I managed to not totally miss the live stream. Yay, San. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let me add this here. There you go. Thank you, Austin. It's very generous of you. Yeah, I don't want anybody finding out the real me. Because if you found out who I really was or what I really looked like, it would be a disaster. And by the way, for those of you that don't know, what you see on the screen now is what X's Grok decided to generate when I asked it to create an image of Scribelight, who runs the Scribelight channel based on his avatar. This is me, according to AI. Can you believe it? I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. But I love it. I really do. Anyway, everybody, I'm going to call it here. That last article took me far longer into the stream than I thought it would. But yeah, so that's the stories that I found interesting this week. If you find any interesting stories over the course of the week, it is possible that I may read them on the air, like I did with Angel versus Suggestion. You just have to post it to the Sunday stream section of the Discord server. A link to the Discord server is now in the chat. If you click on that, you'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me you are not a bot, actually watch the show, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is lacrosse. Sure, just say hello, lacrosse, and I'll know that you watched the show. Beyond that, you can find me here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I go over TEDx talks or TED Talks of interest in different subjects, where we analyze them and critique them and use our critical thinking skills on them, just as I have, I think, on some of these articles, along with bingo cards and all that fun stuff. Again, that's Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And as you can also find me here Sundays, as you already have, presumably, in some way, shape, or form, at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern for the Sunday stream. I also frequently now appear on Midnight's Edge in the morning. Those occur on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, where I join, Andre Einhar. I've been trying to get his name right. I can't do it. Tom Connors, whose name I think I got right. In addition to that, usually Paul Chatto, and who else is there? Chris Braley, oh my gosh. Dang it, I got his last name wrong. I'll get it right eventually. Anyway, the chief editor from Bleeding Fool, I'm stumbling all over myself at the end here. I'm trying to remember all this stuff. Anyway, so yeah, Midnight's Edge in the morning. I'll just stop talking now. That's probably easier. I'm usually there as a panelist, talking about movies and stuff. We'll probably talk about box office results tomorrow on Monday with Culture Casino. Anyway, everyone, hope you enjoyed the show. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, pinned to the top of the chat box. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciated. With that, everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend. I hope the week ahead of you treats you well. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.